Movies. We all love them. I bet that's how most of us are getting through quarantine at this point. There are a ton of different movie genres meant to connect with all of us. Rom-coms are about laugh and love, the nerdy girl always has a chance with a hot cheerleader, historical dramas are taught to us in a fun way, and queer characters always die. Wait, what? Yep, I said what I said. Think about it. When was the last time you watched a movie with a queer character where they got a happy ending? Think about the two most popular queer films as of right now, Brokeback Mountain and Call Me By Your Name. At the end of Brokeback, Jack Twist dies, and at the end of Call Me By Your Name, Oliver goes back to New York and is straight again, leaving Elio and Ennis heartbroken that they can't be with the ones who they love. How did this come to be? Were queer characters always doomed? Well, I'm here to help answer this conundrum. In 1934, newly appointed president of the Motion Picture Producers and Distributors of America, MPPDA, William H. Hayes decided that Hollywood got a little raunchy and needed a makeover. So he created the Motion Picture Production Code, commonly referred to as the Hayes Code, because he was William Hayes. This affected Hollywood in a lot of ways, sometimes making movies nonsensical. No nudity, not even a silhouette. No swearing, no making fun of the Bible or anything related to Scripture. How does this relate, you ask? Well, Rule 11 declared no sympathy for criminals, and until 1969 in Canada and 2003 in America, homosexuality was still a crime.
What Jimmy didn't know was that Ralph was sick, a sickness that was not visible like smallpox, but no less dangerous and contagious, a sickness of the mind. You see, Ralph was a homosexual, a person who demands an intimate relationship with members of their own sex. But by now, Jimmy felt a fondness for Ralph, and they continued to go places together. Ralph was generous and took Jimmy many interesting places and did many nice things for him. He bought presents and even gave him money, but payments were expected in return. You see, Jimmy hadn't recognized Ralph's approach soon enough. When Ralph first asked Jimmy to go fishing alone, he should have discussed it with his parents or teacher. Finally, Jimmy told his parents, and they reported it to the juvenile authorities. Ralph was arrested, and Jimmy was released on probation in the custody of his parents. But all homosexuals are not passive. Some resort to violence, as in the case of Mike Merrick. In the heat of competition, no one noticed the man who sat and watched. And when the game broke up and the others left, Mike decided to stay and practice a little longer. The stranger joined him. He was friendly and, well, it was better than playing alone. But after a few shots, Mike realized he had already overstayed his time and suggested he better leave. The stranger told him if he'd like to stay longer, he'd be glad to drive him home when they finished. Sounded great to Mike. Chance to play longer and get a ride home, too. When they finished, the stranger told him he'd make a fine player someday if he got lots of practice. The companionship, the praise, the friendly attitude dispelled any misgivings Mike might have had about going with a stranger. He probably never realized until too late that he was riding in the shadow of death. But sometime that evening, Mike Merrick traded his life for a newspaper headline.
So, no. From 1934 to 1968, queer people were not allowed to have a happy ending. But we're way past the days of the Motion Picture Production Code. So why are queer characters still treated like we are? Now, you could argue that it's been ingrained in our brains for so long that we don't even realize we're doing it. but that doesn't make it better. It took 2 years after the MPPC disbanded for a movie with a queer character to even be nominated for an Oscar. In 1970, Midnight Cowboy won Best Picture, 41 years after the Oscars were created. The main character in Midnight Cowboy is a bisexual male whose occupation is prostitution, which many look down upon as less than or filthy. His best friend also dies at the end of the film. So, we have a queer character who's not respected and is all alone. What's with that? So clearly we still have the same problem, even though the rules that dictated this no longer exist. In 1994, Tom Hanks won an Oscar for playing a gay man dying of AIDS. Since 1994, only 50% of queer characters in Oscar-nominated films have lived, and of those that lived, only 38% get a happy ending. Okay, so where did all this gay is bad stuff come from? Well, most likely from stereotypical movie characters. If you go back and watch some of your favorite Disney films, you'll start to notice certain things about the villains. Captain Hook from Peter Pan dresses in mostly all pink. Scar from The Lion King is more sophisticated and elegant than the rest of the lions. Governor Radcliffe from Pocahontas is wearing mostly female colors and puffy vests. Ursula from The Little Mermaid is literally based off the infamous drag queen Divine. So when people in real life start showing these qualities, obviously it's going to make people react a certain way. Now, I'm not saying that directors and producers and everyone else who helps make a movie are all just sitting in a room like,
"Gentlemen, I've figured out a way to make them hate us even more." "Pray tell, I'm listening." "We kill all their favorite characters and all the people they represent." "Brilliant, Steve."
No, I don't think that at all. We've had this base for a classic villain for so long that it's second nature to us now. It doesn't make it right, but at least we know where to start to improve things. Something else I found interesting, and by interesting I mean upsetting, is that most movies throw around gay slurs casually. Like in Madagascar, King Julian says to Maurice, "They're just a bunch of pansies," which is typically a slur towards gay men who are more effeminate. Others include fairy, poof, and bugger. Bugger is commonly used in the United Kingdom a lot. Being queer is mostly played off as a joke in most TV shows and movies as well. Like when Bugs Bunny cross-dresses to confuse Yosemite Sam or someone else. Or when Ted and Marshall go to a gay bar and they like the attention they receive, but no homo dude. Or the entirety of the movie Bruno. A common phrase used when someone says, "You know what? I'm done with guys/girls. I'm gay." No, that's not how it works, but it's often played for laughs. When France legalized same-sex relationships, the Cannes jury awarded the most prestigious film honor to Blue is the Warmest Color, a famous lesbian French film. And in the past years, France has been unapologetic about its queer cinema. So, why is America having such a hard time following in France's footsteps? America has a history of watering down queer relationships. Take our two main love interests in Love, Simon. They don't kiss until the last 5 minutes of the film. American screenwriter James Ivory, best known for adapting Call Me By Your Name, has gone on record as to say he wanted to push certain boundaries, but was censored. It's an American attitude, he told Variety. It's not just people in Hollywood, however. Take a look at the audience. One of the many arguments is that homosexuality is not family-friendly. So many studios try to appeal to that demographic as well. In other words, directors in France and Europe aren't controlled by political correctness. In Europe, sexuality is not something to be ashamed of. It's welcomed with open arms, and in America, it's stuffed into the closet. Pun intended. When I was interviewing a teacher at our school, they said it's all about money. Superheroes bring in the big bucks, and if queer films did as well as them, there surely would be more of them. And just so we're clear, a lot of your favorite superheroes are actually queer. Straightwashing is not as uncommon as you might think. In the comics, Wade Wilson, aka Deadpool, is pansexual. Wonder Woman is bi, Louis and Lestat were in a long-term relationship for most of Interview with the Vampire, and Jughead from Riverdale is asexual. And there's many more. I could go on about how European cinema is superior, but Do these kind of tropes only happen in movie and TV shows? In 1952, undergoing the pseudonym Vin Packer, Mary Jane Meeker wrote what is cited as being one of the first lesbian books ever written, called Spring Fire. It focuses on two girls in a sorority who fall in love and then are promptly outed. One of the girls, Lita, is sent to a hospital after having a nervous breakdown, and the other one, Mitch, realizes she wasn't even gay to begin with. This book was a big deal when it came out. It wasn't sold with the regular books. Instead, it was sold at kiosks and train stations, where other books about crimes were sold. This book had a cult following from the start, selling nearly 1.5 million copies and had to be printed 3 times. Meeker wasn't trying to appeal to the lesbian demographic. She didn't know there was one. Spring Fire was reprinted in 2004 and is still highly talked about among most scholars. I have to say, however, while it's great that a queer book is getting this much attention, it was not intended to be a queer love story. And yes, straight romances don't always have a happy ending either, i.e. Romeo and Juliet. But holy crow, was this a depressing read. I know Meeker had to have the girls punished because of the times and the laws that were in place, but it's still quite sad to think that this was groundbreaking queer fiction when one of the girls isn't actually gay and one of the girls goes insane for loving another girl. We've gone through quite a bit of media at this point, and I started to realize yet another trend. Most iconic queer characters are evil, or they just have a really bad moral compass. Dr. Frankenfurter from Rocky Horror is conniving and the main villain. Willow from Buffy starts out good, but once her girlfriend dies, which I could also talk about, she turns to the dark side. Santana from Glee is the rudest character I've ever seen on television. Piper and Alex from Orange is the New Black are literal convicted criminals, spending most of their series runtime in jail. Rose and Louisa had a toxic relationship on Jane the Virgin. Rose was a crime lord who manipulated Louisa on multiple occasions. So here we are at the end. Can queer people have a happy ending? My conclusion is, we're getting there. In some parts of the world, we're actually already there. Thankfully, the queer villain trope isn't as prominent as it once was. The people I interviewed both told me that right now we have the most positive representation there has ever been. But the negative still outweighs the positive. So, yes, we can have a happy story. We just need to push to get there.